Okay, this is part 2 of the video. This is going to primarily focus on the question for the Unit 4 test. So part 1 just reviewed the ccot format and talked about the migration essay for the AOS people. Part 2, we're going to focus on the labor systems essay, which is what you are going to write on Thursday. So the question that you will see on Thursday is here in bold. Analyze the continuities and changes in labor systems in one of the following regions within the time period 1450 to 1900. So 1450, you've got to remember, is about 40 years before Columbus, but as long as you are working with most of the time period, even if you want to deal with 1492 on, that's fine. If you want to talk about the Americas before Columbus versus the Americas after Columbus, that's fine. But again, you need to deal with, your essay needs to deal with the majority of the time period. So, but that gives you a very broad range of time to work with. On the test on Thursday, you may use a guided outline. I will be attaching one to a remind text that I'll send out later today. There is also a copy of it on Vision under the ccot folder. Your notes must be handwritten, not typed. So what I'm actually sending you is a PDF, so you will have to print it out and write in your notes. It is highly recommended that you outline this essay ahead of time. You may not have time to finish the multiple choice and the essay if you do not outline ahead of time. So, first off, we're going to talk about what are labor systems. A labor system is basically any type of system or method for ensuring productivity in the economy. Basically, how is the work getting done? How is stuff being made? How are things being produced? Who's doing it? Labor systems are necessary in every economy. This year we've talked a lot about coercive labor systems, where people are coerced or forced to work. The most common that we've talked about is slavery, of course, but we've also talked about serfdom in Russia, the Midas system, and the encomienda system. Now obviously serfdom is not going to really be part of this essay, a major factor of this essay, unless you're going to tie it in with global context, but I just wanted to put it up there just to show you that that would be considered a coercive labor system, very similar to the encomienda system. Industrialization will bring about changes in labor systems. So remember, we talked about the putting out system. It is also called the domestic system. That is where most of your work is done in piecemeal at home. Then you have a transition over to wage labor or a factory system using wage labor. So that would be a couple examples of industrial labor systems that are used. So wage labor is basically any time that you're working within the industrial system. The factory system, and I didn't put factory system up there, but you can add it in. The factory system applies specifically to people working in factories on assembly lines where they're all going to one place, as opposed to the putting out system, which is where you bring your work home, you do it, and then you take it back. Wage labor would apply to both the putting out system and the factory system. So hopefully that makes sense. If you need to, you can always rewind that section and re-listen to what I said. Immigration also creates new forms of labor. We talked a lot about indentured servitude with the migration essay. Indentured servitude may also be called contract labor. We also talked about golondrinas. So this is where I told you the migration essay is kind of the foundation for the labor systems essay, because a lot of times migration happens when there is a need for labor. However, migration is not the same thing as labor. Some other things that are not labor systems but may be related to labor systems are mercantilism, capitalism, socialism. These are all economic systems. They're not specifically labor systems. The Atlantic slave trade is not a labor system. They are not completing labor in the slave trade or on the ships going over via the Middle Passage. They may be that may be the cause or how we get the labor system, but that is not the labor system itself. Plantations and factories are not labor systems. Now, if you say the factory system, that would be a labor system. So if you're talking about the factory system, you are implying assembly lines, workers going to one location and working in a factory and getting wages for that. That would be considered a labor system. But if you just talk about factories, that's just a building. That's not a labor system. Immigration, also not a labor system. Immigration can contribute to labor systems, but it is not in and of itself a labor system. Unions and guilds are not labor systems. Corporations and joint stock companies, also not labor systems. They may use labor, but they themselves are not labor systems. The caste system, meaning in Latin America, the system of peninsulares, Creoles, mestizos, mulattoes, that is also not really considered a labor system. That is more of a class system. That is more of a social designation of your hierarchy and how you are viewed. Now again, there are some parallels because the mestizos and mulattoes tend to do certain types of work that are different from the peninsulares and Creoles, but that is definitely, the caste system is definitely more of a social system and a social division. It's not really the best thing to use for labor systems. And then women and or children. Also, if you're just referring to women and children doing general types of work, that would not be acceptable for this essay. However, if you talk about women and children as wage laborers in either the putting out system or the factory system, that would work. You just need to be very specific. So all of these terms are things that I've seen on this essay before that cannot be used because they are not labor systems. These are not things that you should be talking about in your thesis paragraph. Your thesis paragraph should be talking solely about the labor systems that were mentioned on the last slide. However, some of these terms may make their way into your body paragraphs as evidence, as you're talking about how these labor systems developed, how they contributed to other things, why they were needed, and that kind of thing. So they are good hints for evidence, but please do not use these in your thesis paragraph unless, of course, on the last one, you're being very specific and talking about women and children as wage laborers. All right, North America versus Latin America or the Caribbean. You have to choose one or the other regions to focus on. There are varying definitions of what is considered part of each, but for our purposes for this essay, I am going to constrain North America to just being the United States and Canada. Latin America and the Caribbean is everything else, everything below the United States. You cannot discuss both regions. You have to focus on one. However, this makes global context very easy because anything outside of your selected region would be considered global context. So basically, even if you're doing Latin America and the Caribbean, developments in North America that are affecting Latin America and the Caribbean could be considered global context, as well as any developments in Europe could be considered global context, Africa, and basically anywhere in any developments anywhere else in the world. However, you do need to develop global context with very thorough explanations, 2 or 3 sentence minimum. That is one area which some people have lost points on for the migration essay, is not having a thorough enough global context. And here are some hints to think about for evidence. First, you want to think about what type of labor did this group do. Be specific. Give the types of products or crops that they produced. Where did they work? A farm is not specific evidence. However, if you give me the type of farm, like encomienda or plantation, that would be considered specific evidence. Mining is also not specific enough. In order to get an evidence point for mining, you would need to give me a specific type of mining. What were their conditions like? And try once again to be very specific. And what contributions did they make to the economy? This is where you can throw some of those economic terms from the previous slide, from this slide, could be thrown in to that when you're talking about how labor systems affected the economy as a whole. So those are some hints for evidence. I'm going to let you guys think more about that, outline that as you narrow down your 3 categories of analysis for this essay. Here are some sources. Now obviously in the video you can't follow the link, but I do have the actual PowerPoint file on Vision. It is under the ccot folder. So you can open up that PowerPoint file and follow the links. You want to find the file that says Writing Workshop 2.9, as it's all in the file name. So the one with a really long file name, that's the one you want to open up to get this slide with these links. And just a last reminder, there is a review session at 8:15 a.m. on Thursday morning in room 211. And I just have to say this because it's February. If there is a 2-hour delay, it'll be at 10:15, and we will take the multiple choice if there is a 2-hour delay. So we'll get that out of the way. I don't think there will be, however, based on what I've seen from the snowstorm so far. I think we'll be good. All right. Have a wonderful snow day.